continue. Namo Om Vishnu Badaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namani Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Yavasisha Sunyavadi Pashtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Okay, so thank you again, devotees, for showing an enthusiastic interest in reading and studying this book, the Suddha Bhakti Cintamani. Now, to begin with, last week we had a bit of a introduction, bit of how we're going to go about it, etc. I guess don't need to repeat that again. We spoke a little bit about the inspiration to read through Suddha Bhakti Cintamani. So that we went over last week. And we are recording these sessions. So if you happen to miss last week's, you can easily get hold of that. And we're recording this week as well. Okay. So as I mentioned last week, I tried to encourage some open questions and discussions. So if you do have anything you want to ask or any clarifications, please feel free to either unmute or you can raise your hand or put something in the chat. So hopefully, Prabhu, if things go in the chat, you can just give me a prompt. Okay? Hare Krishna. All right, let's do a quick overview, and it will be quick, of what we did last week, what we covered last week. Basically, to begin with, we're looking at, or Shivaram Swami Maharaj is looking at, in the Suddha Bhakti Cintamani, he first begins with defining what is Krishna consciousness and where did it come from? Where did Prabhupada, what was Prabhupada's inspiration for naming his society the International Society for Krishna Consciousness? And it comes from this verse by Rupa Goswami from the Pajavali. I just read the translation. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be had by any pious activity. Hundreds of thousands of lives can be attained only by paying one price: the intense greed, lobha, to obtain it. If it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay. Okay, Puchur Prabhu, there's few. Okay, thank you. Few devotees coming in. Right, so specifically, Prabhupada was inspired by this verse here, specifically Krishna Bhakti Rasa. Yeah? The rasa that's derived from the service to Krishna. So Krishna consciousness. Yeah, there's and in the beginning, this person here, famous beat poet of the 60s. Some of you might have heard of him, some not. Allen Ginsberg. He was associated with Prabhupada, and he was very much inspired by Srila Prabhupada in the early days of the movement. And this is when Prabhupada was forming his society. And he said, why not name it the International Society for God Consciousness? Yeah, but Prabhupada said it was too vague. He said it's too vague and too unscientific. So instead, he was very specific, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. Yeah. So this term, it also accommodates devotion to the countless expansions of Krishna. And as we know, Krishna comes, he descends in every age, but specifically the appearance of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, they're extremely rare. So that means we are extremely fortunate. Hari Bol. Yeah. Something great has happened. We happen to have taken birth somewhat near the appearance of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, so, and we're just doing a summary. Okay, so going over a bit quick. So Krishna came, as we know, Bhagavad Gita, not just to establish religious principles, but also to give something quite confidential to distribute, which wasn't known before. Most of the devotees know here the basic Siddhanta of Krishna consciousness of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He came to distribute what's known as spontaneous loving service, and that's that which is exhibited or shown by the presence of Vrindavan. So to be conscious of that means to be Krishna conscious. Yeah. So a confidential reason to give Vraj Prema, yeah, to inundate the world with the ecstasies of perfection that's found in Vraj, yeah, the taste for the four mellows of the Vraj Rasis, love for Krishna. And here, nice pictures here. You have, Krishna's original home is Goloka, and the four mellows are exhibited there: servitude, friendship, and conjugal love, and parenthood. Yeah, so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, as well as to give the holy name, he came to give us this, what's known as pure devotional service. Yeah. And how to develop that, as we know, it's through the chanting, the offenseless chanting of the Maha Mantra. By that, we develop attachment to Krishna, attachment to his form, attachment to his qualities, and attachment to his pastimes. Yeah. So the conclusion is that Krishna consciousness, then, it means to qualify ourselves for this spontaneous devotion in one of these four mellows, yeah, as exemplified by Krishna's Ragatmaka Bhaktas, these eternal companions. And I think we got here, I think we read this as well. Yeah. So, also, Prabhupada didn't, we had some discussion on this. Prabhupada, if you didn't speak of it so much in the public, this ultimate goal, but he did write about it, comes somewhat sparingly, but it's there in his books for sure, because it's the essence of Krishna consciousness. So he did talk about it, he did write about it, and he expected devotees to understand and ultimately pursue it. Yes. And then we read this. This is from 1974. So I can just read this here. So this is my request. You have come to Vrindavan. Try to understand what is Vrindavan Dham, what is Radha Krishna, but very cautiously, very carefully. Go through the Panchatattva. Gradually, you'll be able to understand that it is the highest perfection. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, that Aradhya Vashtu, the worshipable Lord, is Krishna, and he is worshipable. His Dham is also worshipable. Following the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then we'll be favored by the grace of Krishna to understand his pastimes with Radharani. So that's the goal. That's what it means to be Krishna conscious. Yep. And Prabhupada that's why he didn't want it to be the International Society for God Consciousness. Yeah, Krishna consciousness is very specific. Yeah, it means Goloka, it means the spiritual realm, it means the four loving mellows which is found there. So that's, in essence, what it means, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So Maharaj is first establishing this. And here's perhaps Puchur Prabhu, I'll ask you, I can see you there. Can you read this verse for us? This is in the Adi Leela.
The most elevated mellow.
Yes.
May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Sachi Devi, be transcendently situated in the innermost core of your heart. Resplendent the radiance of molten gold, he has descended in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no incarnation has ever offered before, the most elevated mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love.
Yeah. Anapita chiram chira karuna avatirna kalo. Yeah. So this is a very important verse. This is what Krishna consciousness means. This is what Lord Chaitanya came to give. And if you look in the Upadeshamrita, gives even more detail in verse 11 specifically. It's just from Rupa Goswami. He writes that such perfection, this is indeed the most, or this Krishna consciousness it's the most exalted practice of devotional service. This is what of devotion to God. Yeah. So devotees eager that the process of achieving this goal is achieved either by physically, perhaps it's not possible for us to reside in Radhakund or Vrindavan, or mentally in Vrindavan. And point we're making here, ultimately, this verse 11 explains to take shelter of Shri Radha and their confidential maidservants, yeah, and under their direction, engage constantly in her loving service. So we've gone straight to the highest perfection. But what is being highlighted here is this is what it means to be Krishna conscious ultimately. This is what we are aiming for. And so these are just a few little aspects of what Maharaj describes as the legacy. This is what Prabhupada has given us, and we have inherited this from Prabhupada. So it's implicit. This perfection is implicit in the title Krishna consciousness. Yeah. And Gogoshodas Babaji, he mentioned that by offenseless chanting or offenseless meditation on the syllables of the holy name would reveal one's Surupa. Often that's a big discussion. But just by hearing the sound, no need for no Siddha Deha, just by hearing the sound vibration that says Siddha Pranali mantra. Okay. But then a correlation the same way, if we study the words Krishna conscious, yeah, this will indicate this will guide us and indicate our eternal identity. Yeah? This international society for Krishna consciousness. Okay. So please, any questions or comments, anything to add, or any clarifications, please feel free to ask. Okay. Now, what's also, Ramanath Sutta, our guide.
Yeah, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the introduction again. I want to point out there's this kind of like natural tension that, yes, this is the goal of Krishna consciousness, this elevated state of meditation, of Vraj Bhakti, Vrindavan, Radhakund, service to Radharani, all this. But in actuality, it's sometimes frowned upon in ISKCON to talk about Raga Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti, as if no one's really qualified to talk about it and no one's really qualified to hear about it. So it creates a natural tension. Yes, here's the goal, here's a carrot on the stick, but we can't really talk about it.
Yeah. Hopefully, I think perhaps others may comment. I think things are changing slowly, and there is historical reasons why that may be so.
Yeah.
There's historical reasons why devotees may be a bit adverse to such discussions. But things are changing, and but you're going to find that the tenor of presentation in our temples, in our classes, does follow the presentation of Prabhupada, who spoke about these things a little bit sparingly. Yeah, he didn't speak about it in every class, for example, or every lecture. Yeah, but here, as we mentioned, it is only natural as devotees progress in their Krishna consciousness that they're going to want to understand these topics. Yeah, but it may not be for a general presentation to a mixed audience, so to speak. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
I think that's where the tension comes in. There's always going to be a mixed audience, even like at Bhagavatam class many times. So
yeah.
it's you know,
So we do have to be a little bit careful of when we present it, or how we present it, or even if we're qualified to present it as well. But what I see now, I see that there's quite a few devotees who are associated with like-minded devotees, and they're doing different readings and different studies. So that's quite promising. Devotees are discussing these topics, so to speak. Yeah, but it's definitely, yeah. Ramana Sutta is bringing up a good points.
we have the famous example of 1975 or 76. It was soon after the publication of Chaitanya Charitamrita in Los Angeles. There was a group of devotees that got together and
Yeah,
started
go
reading
people.
specific passages about the gopis' love for Krishna. And it came to Prabhupada in a way that was like, oh, this is the Gopi Bhava Club. And Prabhupada, of course, got angry. First deserve, then desire. That famous quote came about. When in effect, the devotees were reading from Prabhupada's books, but Prabhupada took it as a immature understanding of how to approach his books, even.
Yeah, that's part of the so that's part of the history. Yeah, part of the historical
Yes, that's
context.
history.
Yeah,
I
so
think it's in Lilamrita. It should be on
yeah.
Lilamrita. I can't remember. Yeah.
But the important thing is to understand that it's definitely what is being explained here is that it's definitely part of our Krishna consciousness. But there's a time and there's a
Yes.
place and there's a circumstance that it might be discussed. So Prabhupada identified something there. The devotees were being a bit too first, what do you say? First deserve and then desire. Or
First
how do you say?
deserve,
Yeah,
then desire. In other words,
yeah, then desire.
qualify yourself before you start talking about these intimate things, even though, like I said, the devotees were reading from Prabhupada's books.
Yeah.
But their focus was not correct, something like that. I can't remember exactly the exact pastime, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was a shock that went across the ISKCON society in those days.
Yeah. So
Because the
that's for
devotees were all waiting. We were all waiting for Prabhupada to translate Chaitanya Charitamrita. We had a taste from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, so they were waiting for it. And when it actually came out, that's what happened.
yeah. Yeah. Now that was a few years ago. So things have devotees have been practicing Krishna consciousness now for 50 years, isn't it, Ramana Sutta? 50 years,
Yeah,
40 years,
52.
52 years. So it's only a natural development that devotees can take interest in this subject. But still, how it's presented and in what forum should be considered. Yeah, we should generally follow the tenor of Prabhupada's presentation. Yeah, Prabhupada generally will preach along the lines of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, but thank you for bringing it out, Ramana Sutta. It's definitely can be
Yeah.
sometimes the word Raganuga Bhakti can be a swear word. I'm just exaggerating a bit.
Yeah,
But
it's a natural tension.
yeah,
That's my point. It's there.
it's a natural tension. Yeah. So
Yeah.
So Maharaj is just making the point here, what is Krishna consciousness? Yeah, so this is why we mentioned about Vraj Bhakti and the four mellows of that devotees serve the Lord in Vrindavan. This is what is meant by the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. This is our goal. So let's be very clear of that. Maharaj is making that very clear in the very beginning, yeah, what it means to be Krishna conscious and not just God conscious, you know. Papa's being very specific. And now this what I generally do is sometimes, you know, I've had these slides prepared for some time because we did this a couple of years ago. But every time I present it again, then I always add slides and, you know, do some editing. So today or just last night I was looking at the slides and I thought, and this wasn't included, but I thought it'd be good to include this part, which is also there in the introduction. Okay. So Prabhupada, as we know, this picture here is this is Prabhupada late at night translating Srimad Bhagavatam, as we know. So he's given us everything in his books there to dispel any doubts of how to become Krishna conscious. So if we're serious about following Prabhupada, we can always turn to his books for his guidance, and it shows Ramnath Sutta can confirm this point that sometimes devotees reminisce how it was a lot easier to practice Krishna consciousness when Prabhupada was with us. Of course, I never had that opportunity. Yeah. In that sense, Prabhupada easily, any issues, you just ask Prabhupada. Yeah, Prabhupada, philosophical or institutional, Prabhupada was there. Yeah, so Prabhupada easily, I think easily resolved a lot of controversies. Yeah, and now we cannot underestimate the value of Prabhupada's personal presence, Vapu. But as we know, Prabhupada did teach us, and he did want his followers not to be overly dependent on his Vapu form. Yeah. But specifically, he considered his instructions, which is in his books, more important actually, than whatever Maharaj writes here, disciples could glean from his physical presence. Yeah. So Prabhupada often said, and he was quite explicit about this, that someone who's serious, someone that a serious student should study his books, and by studying his books, it can be fixed in a devotional life. Yeah, we can take on. We've been inspired to take on the austerities of Krishna consciousness, and also give us a good perspective of Krishna consciousness according to our Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. Yeah. So but we also understand how to apply Krishna consciousness. We have Sambandha, Abhudaya. We're speaking about that today if we get there. So again, this is just by studying Prabhupada's books, yeah, a clear perspective and how to apply Krishna consciousness, not just in our own lives, but also to others as well. So Prabhupada's books, in other words, they do hold all the answers. And but the answers come when we study Srila Prabhupada's books and we read together. Yeah? That's when we can get a deeper understanding of the details of the practice of Krishna consciousness. And to the extent Prabhupada took this very seriously, perhaps someone could read this quote here in the slide. Some of you might have heard this before.
That's for you. Don't give it around. Yeah. You cannot eat it. Yeah. But, yeah.
Sounds like true
All the
reception.
all the devotees connected
Thank
with
you.
the Krishna conscious movement must read all the books that have been translated, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and others. Otherwise, after some time, they will simply eat, sleep, and fall down from their positions. Thus, they will miss the opportunity to attain an eternal blissful life of transcendental pleasure.
Okay, so I'm quite familiar with this quote. It's very straight to the point. Prabhupada is saying that we have to, again, this point about studying his books to understand the science and the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So under Prabhupada's guidance, then, we as members of his society, this is part of our life, is in studying Srila Prabhupada's books, reading Prabhupada's books, etc., and distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. But Maharaj, he brings out something which is quite important. Sometimes we may have a superficial understanding of Prabhupada's books. Yeah. So we understand the importance, but we're going to it's good to understand how we should study, and we should study Srila Prabhupada's books. Yeah. So I'm just letting a couple of devotees in. Yeah. Now I'm sure all of us here, hopefully, we've spent some time studying, hopefully, and reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And if we're in the right consciousness, if we're in the right mood, there's such extraordinary, Maharaj describes, potency in his writing. So what Prabhupada is presenting, he's presenting really deep philosophical, really deep points, but in a really understandable way. And sometimes we may miss it. Yeah. Prabhupada often what he does, he condenses really deep aspects of Krishna consciousness in simple and effortless presentation, of Krishna consciousness. So in other words, in plain English, Srila Prabhupada makes, or he describes elevated devotional moods and also complex philosophical concepts, understandable even to people like us. Yeah. So, and Maharaj describes here that indeed the spiritual truths in Srila Prabhupada's purports are like hidden veins of gold that when mined reveal pure nuggets of transcendental wisdom. Yeah. Now, if we read, we read Prabhupada's books, again, we can observe that he just in a few phrases, he can give instructions for different readers or different devotees at different levels of practice. In just a few phrases, he gives something relevant to those who are beginning, those intermediate, and also the advanced. It is all there in Prabhupada's books, and that's his empowerment as well, and that's his genius. Yeah. But what is being brought out here, but that word, but, okay. But what is being brought out here, sometimes we read, or sometimes, we may read it superficially, and we cannot perceive this. Yeah. We cannot see it. Prabhupada's many leveled guidance that he gives in his books. So even to the extent that quite a famous saying now, but I should repeat it, that not everything's in Prabhupada's books, as a part of history. That means someone hasn't studied Prabhupada's books. Someone's only done a superficial reading of Prabhupada's books. Yeah. Everything is there. For whatever level one is practicing Krishna consciousness. So, what is superficial reading? This is brought out in the introduction here. It means we fail to see the deeper meaning of the that the author intends. So it's like superficial. And as an example, which we give which we also bring out in our teaching of Nectar of Devotion. Yeah. So what constitutes superficial reading? So there's one example. This is from the Nectar of Devotion. That's often misunderstanding or misreading of Prabhupada's description. Dear devotees, if you could mute, thank you, Rasaraj and Shingha, I think, Hare Krishna. So for instance, in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada writes the following, and or someone like to read this for us? Good to hear some devotees out there rather than just me. Anyone like to read?
I can read.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Now this sadhana bhakti, or practice of devotional service, may also be divided into two parts. The first part is called service according to regulative principles. One has to follow these different regulative principles by the word of the spiritual master or on the strength of authoritative scriptures. And there can be no question of refusal. That is called vaidhi, or regulated. One has to do it without argument.
Okay. And there's more, and I can just read that here. Another part of sadhana bhakti is called raganuga. Raganuga refers to the point at which, by following the regulative principles, one becomes a little more attached to Krishna and executes devotional service out of natural love. Yeah, this is in the very beginning of Nectar of Devotion. It continues. For example, a person engaged in devotional service may be ordered to rise early in the morning. Let me just 1 second, just check here. Okay. excuse me. For example, a person engaged in devotional service may be ordered to rise early in the morning and offer arti, which is a form of deity worship. In the beginning, by the order of the spiritual master, one rises early in the morning and offers arti, but then he develops real attachment. When he gets this attachment, he automatically tries to decorate the deity and prepare different kinds of dresses and thinks of different plans to execute his devotional service nicely. Although it is within the category of practice, this offering of loving service is spontaneous. So the practice of devotional service, sadhana bhakti, can be divided into two parts, namely regulative and spontaneous. So that's from chapter 2 of the Nectar of Devotion. So I'm sure some devotees here, hopefully sometimes we make plans on how we can do our devotional service. Does anyone like coming to Mangaladi? Raise your hand. Yeah. But sometimes, yeah, Deepadatri likes coming to Mangaladi. Great, Hare Krishna. So does that mean that Deepadatri, well, perhaps she is, we don't know. Is she practicing Raganuga Bhakti? Yeah?
No.
Oh, she says no. But it says you are here. You like coming to Mangaladi. Jokes aside, sometimes it's misunderstood. Yeah? It can be misunderstood. This is a definition of Raganuga Bhakti is that you like coming to Mangaladi. So Julian Leela likes coming to Mangaladi. Got a hand raised. Is that a question, Babu Julian Leela, or just hand raised? You like coming to Mangaladi?
Like coming
Okay.
to Mangalarti.
Jai, welcome to Raganuga Bhakti. So, in other words, according to what Prabhupada is saying here, it may, a superficial reading, someone may come to this conclusion, oh, I like to do this, that means I'm on the stage of Raganuga Bhakti. But it's not a complete definition of Raganuga Bhakti, okay? That comes later. That comes in chapter 16, okay? And that's in chapter 16, Prabhupada says here. Someone could read this for us?
Hare Krishna. Can I read?
Go ahead. Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Persons desiring to follow in the footsteps of such eternal devotees of the Lord as the Vrishni and Vrindavan denizens are called Raganuga devotees, which means that they are trying to attain to the perfection of those devotees. There is a gradual development of the ambition to become like a particular devotee, and this activity is called Raganuga. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Yeah, and could you read this as well, Mother?
Yeah. Yeah. We must always remember, however, that such eagerness to follow in the footsteps of the denizens of Braja, Vrindavan, is not possible unless one is free from the material contamination. In following the regulative principles of devotional service, there is a stage called anarthanibrati, which means the disappearance of all material contamination. When one is actually spontaneously attracted to the loving principles of the gopis, there will be found no trace of any mundane contamination in his character. The Nectar of Devotion, chapter 16.
Yeah,
Thank
chapter
you, Prabhupada.
16.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so that's a more comprehensive understanding. So the superficial understanding, you might just read the beginning of Nectar Devotion and make that wrong conclusion there. But more of a serious study, we actually study what it means, or what is actually Raganuga Bhakti, and here Prabhupada gives a more comprehensive understanding. So we're just making this point. It's very important that we don't just have a superficial understanding or reading of Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada's books gives instructions for everyone at different levels of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Brahmanath Sutta, you had your hand raised. Is that a question?
Yeah,
comment?
thank you.
Please, yeah.
Just a quick comment. These two categories, Vaidhi Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti, but
Yeah.
I like to tell devotees there is a gray area as well. It's not it's not so cut
One or
and
the other.
dry. Yeah, it's not so
Yeah.
cut and dry. So there is that gray area. So you could say three categories in one sense. But someone who's developing Rag Bhakti, they'll always say that they're not. They'll always feel themselves still on the
Yeah.
stage of Vaidhi Bhakti, even though they may be actually, dipping their toes in that ocean of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and going into Rag Bhakti. But that's so anyone who claims they're on Rag Bhakti, that's an immediate like a red flag. There's something wrong here. You don't claim that. No one would claim, oh yes, I'm in the second category. These other devotees in the first category.
Yeah, very good point.
There's always
Actually,
that sense of humility. Always that sense of humility.
yeah. Yeah, and that's given also in the Nectar of Instruction as well, where a devotee always carries, even if he's very advanced, then he presents himself as a neophyte. Yeah. And but also Rupa Goswami does go on to, in the Nectar of Devotion, to give symptoms by which one can ascertain that one is an advanced devotee. He gives 9 specific symptoms. But devotees themselves, yes, they're not going to advertise themselves as such. Mother Deepadatri, is that your hand still raised? You had a question or comment?
Yes, please. Sorry,
Please,
it
yes.
might sound like a silly question. Please forgive me, but I just wanted some
I'm sure it's
clarification.
not.
So,
Yeah.
no, what's the main difference between Vaidhi Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti, and Rupa Nuga Bhakti? I mean, all three of them sound similar, but they sound different at the same time. So, could you clarify on that,
Okay.
please?
Okay, so just to let the devotees know that these series of classes are not on the subject of Raganuga Bhakti. They're on the different stages of Krishna consciousness. But still, good with some clarification. So what's the Raganuga? There's Vaidhi Bhakti, there's Raganuga Bhakti, and there's Raganuga Sadhan. I think that's what you mean, Mother Deepadatri. Mother. So Vaidhi Bhakti, we just heard, it means where the inspiration for our execution of devotional service comes from the instructions of scripture. Like, for example, we chant 16 rounds. Why? Well, I made the vow to chant 16 rounds. Yeah. So therefore, that's why I'm chanting 16 rounds, basically. So we're following. Yeah. So we don't want to, where that's our inspiration, to follow the regulative principles. Yeah. Why? Because that's the instruction given by the spiritual master. Now, Raganuga Bhakti is where, as Prabhupada did mention, or what we read, where one is inspired by the mood and service of the residents of Vrindavan. And that's what inspires them. Externally, things stay the same, but their inspiration is coming from a different place. So Rahaga, they have a specific attachment to the residents of Vrindavan, to Krishna, and that gives them great inspiration. And that's what impels them in their devotional practice. Now, Raganuga Sadhan, we have Vaidhi Sadhana, we have Raganuga Sadhana. So there's 2 paths to achieve perfection. There's a path of Vaidhi, by which one becomes purified, and then at the stage when one makes at the stage of at the stage of bhava, excuse me, when all impurities are gone, they will be attracted to the residents of Vrindavan. They'll be attracted at that stage, their hearts cleanse, and they will render Raganuga spontaneous devotional service. Okay, that's through Vaidhi. And Nectar Devotion gives examples of bhava or Raganuga Sadhan obtained through Vaidhi. One of those examples is Prahlad Maharaj, who followed the instructions of the Bhakti Vedantas. Okay, is that clear so far? So that's
Yes.
But then Raganuga Sadhan, which means one may be, at least as Prabhupada explained here, can come before, but at least at the stage of Nishta, one is fixed And we'll describe what that means. That's what that stage means. We'll be getting into that. Actually, we'll be describing all the different stages of Krishna consciousness as we go through the Suddha Bhakti Cintamani, and what is our specific sadhana according to the stage that we are on. So it's very interesting. But a Raganuga, someone is practicing Raganuga sadhana, at least at the stage of Nishta, and they're hearing under instructions from the Guru, Diksha, Shiksha Guru. They're hearing about, and they hear about, and they're inspired about the spiritual world, the Krishna book, but they're still conditioned souls. They're not liberated souls. They're still conditioned souls, at least at the stage of Nishta. Yeah. So they may, in their own bhajan, under instructions from the spiritual master, follow a specific inspiration to hear about Krishna's pastimes, etc. So sadhana, Raganuga sadhana, Vaidhi sadhana. Yeah. Maharaj mentions in one book, he writes a book of The Awakening of Spontaneous Devotion, and he explains there, after explaining what is spontaneous devotion, he makes the very important point that Prabhupada's preferred path, which he has given us to obtain spontaneous devotional service, is through the path of Vaidhi. Yeah, but Prabhupada also in his books, he gives directions of devotees who may be inspired to follow the path of Raganuga sadhana as well. So someone who is following the path of Raganuga sadhana, it will be an internal thing. And also, as Ramanath Sutta said, to make it even more, I don't know, use the word complicated, or more, it is not black and white. Yeah, some devotees may be practicing the aspect of Vaidhi, some may be practicing the aspect of more spontaneous. It can become mixed. So, for example, an example of that, if you hear that advanced devotees you hear that advanced devotees, they like to read about Krishna's pastimes that he does throughout the day. Yeah. And you may not be particularly attracted to that, but you hear that devotees do that. Oh, let me do that also. That's Vaidhi. It's not your natural attraction. So that's like you're doing a Raganuga sadhana, but it's mixed with Vaidhi. You know. Did that give some clarification of the Padatri? It's a big subject.
Yes, it is. But yeah,
Has anyone had that feeling where you jump in a swimming pool and you start swimming around in a deep end and you realize you're in a deep end? That's how I feel at the moment. I'm swimming around in the deep end. Ramana Sutta, you can give some comments or clarification.
Yeah, I'm sorry to keep jumping in here, but I just love this conversation so much.
You're a senior here. We need your guidance.
Okay, thank you. But I have 2 points. And it's actually really fascinating when you think about it, how Prabhupada established these standards of Vaidhi Bhakti, Mangalarti, Tulsi Puja, early in the morning.
Yeah.
And we have to develop a taste for that. But when you analyze the prayers of Guru Vastakam, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Hare Krishna, it gets right into Raga Bhakti, right there in the prayers, what to say of Tulsi Puja. So in our Vaidhi Bhakti, Prabhupada's feeding us like babies, Rag Bhakti at the same time.
Good point.
So it's a meditation. So the point is to actually go deep into the meditation of what these prayers are during those activities, and to know that also someone who is on a Rag platform, they'll never give up the Vaidhi platform because it's so relishable.
Yeah.
It's like this unlimited ocean is being handed to them. Give it up? Never. So sometimes there's this misconception that, if you're on Rag Bhakti, you don't have to follow rules and regulations. No, you actually follow them more strictly than ever.
Yeah. even there's a statement that Prabhupada says that those on the
Yeah.
stage of spontaneous practice don't follow the regular principles very strictly. What that doesn't mean, what that actually means is that they're inspired by their attraction. Yeah, that's what that actually
Exactly.
means.
You don't give up these principles ever. Once you start the practice of Vaidhi and you start making progress, it's like that's it. That's your life is Vaidhi Bhakti always.
Yeah. But the taste you're getting is becoming very, very sweet. So also my Guru Maharaj mentioned that actually it's right in this regard. He mentioned it is right under our noses. For instance, the Tulsi prayers. If you hear the translation of Tulsi prayers,
Yes, thank you. It's right under our noses. We're
under noses.
praying to become a manjari of the gopis in Vrindavan, to have the privilege of that form of devotional spirit. So this is actually manjari bhava by the Goswamis, and that's pure Raganuga Bhakti, but we don't talk about it. But again, Prabhupada gives it in our Vaidhi Bhakti. And even Prabhupada never, as far as I could, in the research I did, he never commented on Guru Vasakam. He never commented on the Tulsi prayers. He just gave it to us, kind of like, okay, you figure it out.
Yeah. So just a reminder, devotees, again, we will be discussing all the different stages of devotion. This is what Suddha Bhakti Cintamani is about. From the very beginning stages, from the next chapter is the planting of the seed, and all the different stages of Krishna consciousness. We're not just discussing Raganuga Bhakti, okay? But it will come up quite a few times. So hopefully it will be interesting to devotees in that regard. Bhakti Gamya, Baba, please, you have a question, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just first I want to say thank you for the just beautiful discussion. It's very, very
Thank you for
nice.
joining us. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I just wanted just to double check because you mentioned that you mentioned Prahlad Maharaj and the Bhaktivedantas was an example of Vayu Sadhana Bhakti. Double checking, is that Narada Muni in his previous life as the son of a maid servant?
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you. That was my mistake. It was Narada Muni. Yeah, it wasn't. Did I say Prahlad Maharaj?
That's what I heard. So I just want to double.
Sorry, I'm getting a bit dizzy.
No,
correct. Thank you. That's Narada Muni. Yeah, Nectar Devotion. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, Narada Muni. Yeah, he's given us an example of following the Bhakti Vedantas. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else has any questions out there? Okay. Right, so that completes. That's just the introduction. Okay. And there's so much in there. This is just the introduction. So we've got 10 minutes left. And let's have a look then. Get a peek into chapter 1. So give me 1 minute while I bring it up. I had it ready earlier. Okay. Move things around a bit. Okay, so that was the introduction. Okay, so hopefully we've got some idea of the direction we're going in, and hopefully some of you might have. I did mention last week that if you have a copy of Suddha Bhakti Cintamani, that you're good to read the introduction and the preface as well, where Maharaj he maps out the inspiration, etc., for writing this book, Suddha Bhakti Cintamani. So if you have that opportunity, it's very much recommend that you read. And so part 1, I think Suddha Bhakti Cintamani comes in 5 parts. This is part 1. So first we're going to speak about mixed devotional service. Yeah, the title is the Seed of Devotion, and specifically we're going to hear about the general of, or describe the nature of devotion in general, and a very interesting subject of how it awakens, how it begins to develop, the nature, and how a person becomes eligible for devotional service. So these will be spoken, the nature of devotion in general. Later on, we'll discuss it in more detail, or discuss pure devotion in more detail based on the verse from the Nectar of Devotion, Yabadasta Samyam. Yeah. So the thrust of this presentation, also actually no, before we get there, here we're going to describe what's first described is the impure motives for devotion, or that covers the conditioned souls, yeah, and creates a variety of mixed devotional service. Yeah, so in order for us to appreciate more the sanctity of pure devotional service, first there's quite an elaborate discussion on mixed devotional service. Yeah, so we can kind of appreciate its in general, you could say its rareness, but have a great to appreciate what it actually means, ultimate bhakti. Yeah. And actually, even furthermore, you'll see, I think we mentioned last week that some of these chapters we might find a bit uncomfortable, because in that sense it forces us to analyze our own devotion and to determine whether it's pure or mixed. Yeah. So hopefully this will be inspiring. Yeah. We want to inspire us to advance in devotional service. Yeah. It goes into quite some detail about what is pure devotion and what is mixed devotion. Yeah. Now, first is presented here, knowledge of Sambandha, knowledge of relationship, that's known as Sambandha. I can just read here. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 7, text 146. One's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, activities in terms of that relationship, and the ultimate goal of life, to develop love of God. These three subjects are explained in every aphorism of Vedanta Sutra, and they form the culmination of the entire Vedanta philosophy. Yeah. So here, the Sambandha Jhana, so it comprises of four aspects. Yeah. The Supreme Lord, the living entities, the material world, and their interrelationship. So the living entities' relationship, the material world's relationship with the Lord's relationship, the living entities with the material world, etc. That's their interrelationship. This is Sambandha Jhana. And it's where we will hear why it's important for devotees to be established in very clear understanding of Sambandha Jhana. Yeah. Then Abhidheya, as we know, it means to practically apply that knowledge, and then Prayojan, this refers to the goal. Yeah. Okay. Now, it's to acquire, so this is our duty, or this is what we need to do. We need to acquire knowledge. This is what we need to do as a Vaishnavas. It's our primary duty, is to develop a very clear understanding of Sambandha Jhana. So again, this is why we cannot underestimate the importance of studying Srila Prabhupada's books, because Prabhupada is explaining it in practically every purport. So much he gives about Sambandha Jhana. So this is this knowledge, it acts like a well-trained, like a weapon. It's one sense a weapon for dealing with the material world here. Like this, unless devotees are sufficiently educated in Sambandha Jhana, their efforts on the battlefield of devotional service will surely meet with setbacks and downfalls. Yeah. So unless, if we're not sufficiently educated, so someone may be very sincere, but unless one is sufficiently educated in the principles of Sambandha Jhana, there is a chance that there will be setbacks, yeah, or even there could be downfall. So someone could read, yeah, someone could read this for us. So does it mean we have to become a scholar then? And this is addressed here.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Yeah, even you do not read the books, simply if you take part in these three things chanting, dancing, and taking part in eating the prasadam, your life will gradually progress in spiritual advancement of life. Then someday will come that you will understand what is Krishna. And as soon as you understand Krishna, then after leaving this body, you go back to home, back to Godhead. Rathayatra
Okay.
lecture, Lord.
Okay, thank you. So it's good to take note of this when we're discussing about the importance of developing Sambandha Jhana and all the details that we mentioned here. Yeah. It doesn't mean specifically we may not have that proclivity, but it doesn't mean that we should become great scholars. Yeah. Sometimes sometimes we may hear about the importance of developing transcendental knowledge, and we may feel a little bit uninspired because it might not be our nature to study very, very deeply. Yeah. But we should but we do need transcendental knowledge, and it can come, as what Prabhupada is saying here, from taking part in the activities of our devotional culture. Yeah, Prabhupada is speaking at Rath Yatra here. But we can receive transcendental knowledge by hearing from devotees. So just attending classes, even attending this little sangha, yeah, and also by coming to the level of pure chanting, yeah, we can obtain transcendental knowledge. So even if devotees, so in short, what's been explained, even if devotees do not read books to acquire Sambandha Jhana, they can gain it by chanting purely, okay? In that way, devotees can proceed. But still, whether through study, whether through hearing, whether through chanting or combination, one must acquire Sambandha Jhana, yeah? Have a clear understanding. Otherwise, there could be some obstacles to our progressive devotional service. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada, yeah, let's just go here. Srila Prabhupada here. This is from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Someone could read this for us?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can I read?
Hare Krishna, yes, please, thank you.
Cannot be spiritually attuned to Lord Krishna. Without knowledge of transcendental truth, no one's heart cannot be spiritually attuned to Lord Krishna. If one lacks knowledge of his relationship with Krishna, then the proper execution of devotional service in relationship to him is impossible.
Okay. This is from
Rasa Shatta Dushani 26.
Yeah, this wasn't in the slides this morning, but I put it in. I read it in Suddha Bhakti Cintamani and thought, how could I miss that? So I put this in as a quote from Bhakti Siddhanta, and also from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, mentions the same. Someone would like to read this?
Yes, I can read this.
Yes, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. As long as the jiva is not firmly established in the knowledge of Sambandha Tattva, he will be unable to disperse the mist and clouds of anarthas from his heart. In this state, the jiva cannot chant the pure name of Krishna his chanting being polluted by unwanted things. Sri Harinam Cintamani, chapter 3.
Chapter
Hare
3.
Krishna.
Okay, thank you. All right. So just again, just emphasizing this point, knowledge, we need to develop knowledge, transcendental knowledge, especially knowledge of Sambandha, our relationship with Krishna and the material world, for us to be able to progress very nicely in Krishna consciousness. So Sambandha Gyan consists of these 4 principles. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean we have to become a scholar, not necessarily. But we do have to obtain Sambandha Gyan. It may be obtained by hearing from devotees, regularly attending classes. It may be obtained from engaging in readings like this. So it may be obtained from the pure chanting of the holy name. Yeah. Let me just read that again. Yeah. Yeah, you have a question, Baba? See, your hand is raised. You're muted. I can't hear you. Your hand is raised, but you're muted. All right, let's just carry on. So, it doesn't mean we have to become great scholars, but we do have to obtain a good understanding of our relationship with Krishna, the material world, etc., in order for us to go ahead in devotional service, okay? And then I just finish here for today with this quote from Srila Prabhupada. Self-realization is the position of the liberated state. One understands his constitutional position by knowledge and vairagya. So by knowledge and detachment. Without knowledge, one cannot have realization. The realization that one is the infinitesimal part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit, Sambandha Gyan, makes him unattached to material conditional life. That is the beginning of devotional service. Unless one is liberated from material contamination, one cannot engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. Okay, that's from Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so let's stop there. Always feels like we're stopping on a cliffhanger. Last week we stopped as well when we could have gone on more, but let's stop here. I hope this was of some interest. So again, we're just beginning. We've gone through the introduction. Now we're just going for the first chapter. And next week, we're going to get into a bit of defining devotional service in a general way. And as we mentioned earlier, we're going to speak about how it awakens and why does Bhakti manifest itself, and we get into this subject. Okay? So thank you everyone for your kind attention. Hope it was, again, of interest what we went through today. If you have any additional comments or questions, you're quite welcome to put them on the group. But I thank you for attending, and I will put up the recording hopefully by the end of, or by tomorrow. So thank you everyone. And any last questions or comments? If not, we can stop there and hope to see you next week. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Bo.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare